What is going on, people? It is the Nicholas Persakis Chelsea Football Channel. And today we are going to be reviewing the players' overall ratings since the previous international break. Like we did about a month ago, of course, every month or whatever international break. When it comes along, we're going to be doing a review of how we think the players have played since. And that's going to be the entire club. And as well, I think I might throw in my starting lineup that I think at this point I would like to see starting in the Premier League. Because I think at this point it's a good way to sum up how we think those players that should be at the top, and based off of their performances, we see them and we view them. I think that's a really good way to put it. So I think we're going to do that as well. So here's the team sheet. All the players in the current Chelsea starting team. Starting from the bottom to the top, Robert Sanchez. How are we feeling about him so far this season? I guess since the last international break, we gave him, I think, a 7 to 10 last time. It's gone down, I think, to a 4 out of 10. I've been very uninspired by how Robert Sanchez has played in recent few games. Mistakes have been the thing we've been labeling. His inconsistency has just been viewed apart. It's just another one of those things we saw last year with all the inconsistency and mistakes he was making, and it's the same thing again. So I think that at this point, this is the number one position that we're going to have to either one replace in January, or there's gonna have to be a switch in January or even sooner than that when it comes to the starting player at this position. Because I think there's only a certain amount of time that I can give more time to for Robert Sanchez. I have no doubt in my mind that Maresca is going to keep playing him for who knows how long. Who knows how long? But if he doesn't show any signs of improvement in some kind of ability, like we know he's a good shot stopper. He's proven on certain capabilities he's a really decent shot stopper. But what he hasn't been able to show is the fact that he makes his mistakes and he can't fix the mistakes. And then his distribution has also not been good. So it hasn't helped anything for him. It hasn't been helped anything for him. So for that reason alone, he gets a 4. And the goalie position is going to just be one that we're going to be looking at all season, unless we buy a replacement. Philip Jorgensen, or I think it's Jorgensen. I think it's like the J is like hard or something. It's a hard J or whatever. I think he gets a 5. I think he gets one rating higher because he hasn't. It's for the simple reasons that he hasn't made mistakes in games that he like should be making mistakes in. Of course, he was not good in the Newcastle Carabao Cup game, but that's the only time we've really seen him be bad. The other games he of course hasn't gotten tested in, but at the same time, I don't think I can give him anything worse than a 5. And that's when talking about this lineup, it creates somewhat of a problem. Because when your goalie's not giving you more than a 6, there's a problem. There's an obvious problem in the team. And with these two guys, I would much rather see right now Georgie Petrovic, or hell no, God knows, I'd rather see Mike Penders. Is he that good? Do we know if Mike Penders is the next Thibaut Courtois? We signed him for almost 20 million to be a goalie of the future. He's not going to be a guy we just straight up sign to sell. There's no way, right? There's no way we're going to sign a player of his quality, especially at a position like that, just to sign and sell. I can't see that happening. But Jorgensen has been obviously good in the Carabao Cup games, but I didn't see in that game against or not Carabao Cup, the Conference League games. In the Carabao Cup, he was not very good. So for that reason alone, I think he gets a 5, but nothing else special. Bettinelli obviously hasn't played. Bergstrom hasn't played. DCC is an interesting one because, of course, he's another player who I'm not sure if he's played a Premier League game this season. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any. He's played okay in the. Actually, he did play a cup game, but I don't think he's played in a Premier League game since the Bournemouth one. Obviously, as that starting right back. But I don't think that DCC in general has been too spectacular. Of course, the Noah game, he had a goal and an assist, but he's nothing spectacular. These conference league games he should be performing, and he should be above the level of the Carabao Cup. Just like every single one of these players should be the capable or above the Carabao Cup. Just like we showed against Noah with the 8-0. So I think DSC, a 5 or a 6 is very fair for him. After the Noah game, he showed great. Him and the entire defensive line had a good performance. But there's not much I can give him right now. That the fact that we're not seeing him play as much, and he's not coming off the bench as a sub in any of the Premier League games either. So it's hard for me to rank him. Marco Correa, um, it's a 7. I mean, Marco Correa has been, even extremely underrated by his own manager somewhat this season. And I think it's harsh because not only was he the starting left back for most of the beginning half of the season, and then I think it was what was it? He rotated out for some reason. I cannot remember the reason he was rotated out of the lineup and Malo Gusto came in, and then he basically was forced to play the Conference League game, which we thought was going to be forced out of the lineup, but Maresca saw the quality. Marco Correa clamped up Saka the other day, and he's been brilliant. And overall, the backline hasn't been awful, and he's a main reason why it hasn't been awful. Marco Correa is getting a 7. He's been very, very solid, and I think he's going to continue that way. Hopefully, with good, consistent playing time and being that starting left back, he'll be it. I'm very happy with how he's progressed here, Chelsea. Tosin, I think Tosin's a very good. I think him and DSC. I think the entire guys. I think DSC, Badiashile, and Tosin are all very similar. They're gonna all rotate in a center back slash right back position, but at the same time, they're not getting good enough playing time outside of the cup games and the Carabao Cup games that the fact that they're going to be getting notified. They're all going to get the same 5 to 6. I think Tosin's been better than the other two, but at the same time, I don't think he's been elevating himself enough to the point where he's going to replace the other two guys in Levi and Wesley, who we're going to get into right now. So I think those guys are pretty much picked themselves. They've not been spectacular. They've not been great. I'm not going to replace them with anybody else at this point. It's that simple. We thought Badiashile was going to be great after those 2 games we saw, but then when he came in, he just played like atrocious in that Carabao Cup game and ruined his chances, honestly, for making it into the lineup. Levi, a 6 or a 7, I think is very fair. The game against Arsenal, I think was honestly, I think we'll give him a 6.5, just because I can't. I'll use half ratings because I can't give if you're right in the middle, I'm just going to give the rating for a 6 or a 6.5, just because I can't pick between the 7 or a 6 because I think the discrepancy between it is too much. So Levi Kolak gets a 6.5. He hasn't been spectacular, but again, him and again, we haven't even gotten to Wes yet, who's a little bit later in the list, but Wes and him have been around the exact same. I think Levi was better in the beginning half before the international break than he's been since, but I think he's stayed pretty consistent and his progressive passing has been very good. His tackling's been a little bit of an issue, and of course, the attitude's been a little bit of a problem. But I think his passing has been a major part of why he's been so successful this season. And with consistent playing time, of course, he's going to only get better. Of course, we can't rank Ben Chilwell because obviously no, he's not going to play and he's going to leave. But Reece James, of course, since we've seen Reece James back, how have we thought he's played? Of course, Reece just got back. Around it was it around? I think it was around the time we got back from the international break. I think it was Liverpool game was his first game back. He's played in all 3 Premier League starts, not starts, but all 3 games back. Of course, he didn't start the last game. He only played a few minutes in the previous one, which I was a little disappointed with. But at the same time, Reece James has been very, very good. I think you can give him a 7. I think that in the first game against Liverpool, he was very solid. I didn't think that it looked like Reece was back on track. He hadn't played for a very, very good amount of time because, of course, he played at the end of the season, got suspended, and then came in at preseason, and he got injured, didn't play at the beginning of the year, and then came back and came straight back into soccer, and he's looked pretty damn good. Of course, he didn't play, I think, in the game on Sunday because of tactical reasons, being that he wanted Malo Gusto to do a lot more running. And I just don't think that Reece James is there yet. Otherwise, he would be playing, I think, over Malo, but there's no other reasoning behind it, in my opinion. I think the fact alone is I don't think Reece's legs are there to do that much running, and he needs to keep playing that kind of inverted fullback role, tucking in besides the other center backs. And I think Cucurella should be the guy who's getting more of an inverted role, but Maresca hasn't done it. He likes to invert the right back more than the left back. But that's just something that I think needs to be up for discussion. But I think Reece James easily can get a 6.5 rating as well. I think he's been very solid since he's came back. Malo Gusto, however, I think a lot of Chelsea fans have been up for discussion with this one. I think Malo Gusto only should get about a 5.5. Yeah, I'm saying he's been average, but at the same time, from what we saw in Malo Gusto last season, we have not been seeing that type of player this year. Is that because of the tactics? Maybe. Is that to do with him just playing inconsistently? Also, maybe. But what we've been seeing out of him hasn't been the same player. On the field, is it this inverted wingback role that's been killing him? It damn well might be. I'm not sure if he's the one who's going to be made for this role. Like we've said, Reece James has played midfield in the past. Of course, Malo has as well, but Reece has played full seasons as a midfielder, obviously for teams like Wigan. Now, do I think that Malo could develop this role? Of course. But as it stands, Reece James should be the starting right back in this lineup, and Malo should be the substitute. There's no plain and simple. I think Malo has done very well in replacing Reece when he's been injured, but right now I don't think he's there to replace him anytime soon. So I think Malo can easily should be getting an average rating, a 5.5, maybe 5, maybe 6. Any of those three, I think, are easily given to him. Wes, I think him and Levi Colwill getting 6.5 are both very fair ratings. I do not think that, especially after the last game, West was easily one of the better performers in that last game. Especially after we thought he might have been injured, with the previous game against United after he had that giant brace on his knee, but came out and he looked spectacular in Arsenal. And now he's going to stay at Cobham training through the international break because he wants to stay fit for the club season, which is spectacular. Showing a player who'd rather commit himself to club season than he would French soccer, which is very, very good and didn't seem like would he'd want to do that after all that stuff with Marseille came out. But I've been very, very happy with how Wes has developed. And this last game against Arsenal was definitely one of his best, probably either as a Chelsea player or just this season. But it's very good to see that he's getting back up to speed. And I think it was eventually going to happen. And hopefully he will see more of this form from him at that position. Now, Vega, we gave a very high rating to before in the first international break. But since I think he's been very average, Vega, of course, I love this guy. I think he was such a quality pickup for how much money we spent on him. But at the same time, I don't think he's been nearly as good. I think a 5 is easily given to him. I don't think, he even did his fair share. In the Carabao Cup game, he was not good. I think, was the lowest rated player in that Carabao Cup game. In the Conference League game, everybody was fine. So I don't think giving anybody really a true rating in that one was really even a given anyway. But he's not a guy who's going to come into these Premier League games. He's a certified B team player right now, Renato Vega, which is not a bad thing because you're still going to get good playing time in a way. But a 5, I think a 5 is very fair. Not many mistakes, not many good things to say about Vega right now either. Outside of that like 10-minute period in the Noah game, I'm pretty sure where he split the pass through, he was very good in that 10-minute span. But I'm going to stick with my rating. Now, a big one up for discussion. Enzo Fernandez. How do I think Enzo? It's going to be very intriguing when I get to guys like Caicedo and Lavia. Because personally, in a way, after the Arsenal game, you can't just say because of the Arsenal game, the rating should go up higher. You can't just say that. Yes, he played the assist that got us the equalizer. How much did he do for it, really? Not much. He played the split pass, but it was an easy pass through, and Neto gets the goal, of course, but he's the one who does it. But at the same time, I have still not liked what I've seen. The last 2 games from Enzo have been great. Played 45 minutes in the Noah game, and he already got a hat trick of assists, got taken off. But he played great. He played spectacular. But I don't think that can make up for the performances previous. I just don't think it can. And there's a reason why he's fallen out and Romeo Lavia has become the starter. I think Enzo is another guy who I think because of his last 2 performances bumps it to, I would say, a 5.5, a 5.5. I don't think it could be any better than that. If it wasn't for these last 2 performances, I think it's even a 4.5. What we've spent on Enzo Fernandez for him to be this much worse than our current starting pairing in the midfield is not enough. It's simply not enough. And again, how much of it has to do with tactics and how much has to do with the player, I have no idea. But for right now, Enzo has been pure average. And that's around what I gave him last time we did this. So this has to improve again. Carney, I'm not going to rank it because I feel like it's not fair. He hasn't gotten any playing time. It's that simple. He did those crazy good skill moves in the Noah game as well, but again, he hasn't played, and I think he's a player who's going to leave in January. Now, Shrewsbury Hall, in that Carabao Cup game against Newcastle, he was horrible. But again, that was tactical mismanagement on Maresca's part. He never should have been playing on the right hand side in the first place. Never. In a million years would I pick Shrewsbury Hall to play on the right hand side. I would rather play Tyreek George there, but he didn't do that either. Shrewsbury Hall has been pretty much completely average ever since he's gotten to Chelsea. And he's like a lot of people have been saying, drink water. Dude, with more time, it could be. Shrewsbury Hall has not got any game time in the A team really much at all this season. I'm not even sure if he's in these lineups for these 18 games. For sometimes it doesn't even seem like he's not even a thought to get picked in these 18 games. And that for that reason, Shrewsbury Hall is getting a 4.5. I can't give it a 5. He's been below average. The reason being that he hasn't even been playing consistently in these Prem games. And that, in my opinion, is already enough to be a failure. $35 million. We could have just saved it and kept Conor Gallagher. I'm going to keep saying it. Conor Gallagher could have been massive for this team, man. He would have been so important. I don't believe for a second that he would not fit in Maresca's system. I don't believe it. Moise Caicedo, best defensive midfielder in the Premier League right now is Moises Caicedo. It is a 9 out of 10. Obviously, when you give ratings and you give certain, like I gave him a 7 out of 10 of the game at Arsenal, but he's been so consistent all the way through this international break, basically, that I cannot give him anything. A 9 out of 10. This guy has been the heart of the midfield. I cannot see any way in a world sense that this guy is not the first or second name on the team sheet. At this point, he's becoming almost important as Cole Palmer is. It's that simple. He's the first or the second name on the team sheet, no matter what circumstance. If Caicedo's at 80%, he plays. If Caicedo's at 60%, he plays. If he's at 40%, he plays. He's that good this point this season. All year round, he's been so good this point this season. Ever since basically January of last season, he's been that guy. He is not looking at the price tag. Nobody's looking at the price tag at this point. He is ready and he is firing on all cylinders. He's been that good. I've been super excited by Moise Caicedo, and it's going to keep going on. Casadei, of course, he hasn't played as much as he was a little bit earlier on, but I think he's been okay in his sub appearances. I think he gets around a 5. I don't think he's been too spectacular. In the Noah game, he did take a one-time shot that was saved by the goalie, but it wasn't a real spectacular shot. I think 5 out of 10 is really fair, but he's got limited playing time. It's very unfair to give him anything more than that. Kellyman, he's still injured, of course, but he's never going to play for our team anyway. He's a youth team player. He needs a loan out is what he needs. Romeo Lavia, I think, you easily could give Lavia a pretty high score, and I think I'm going to give him a 7. I've been very happy with how he and Caicedo have done in the midfield. They've looked a lot more condensed. And like Maresca said, the tactic has they've done very well together. And I think they've been more defensive stability in that case. And it's been proven. We haven't been conceding. We could see about a goal a game at this point. The last few games we've been conceding. I think the last 3 Premier League games we've conceded either 1 and then 2. I was Liverpool, we conceded 2 and then the last 2 we conceded 1 each. But at the same time, I've been very, very happy with how Romeo Lavia has played, and giving him this consistent playing time coming after these injuries is very important. And for that reason, he gets a 7. And I hope that for right now, he stays the starting midfielder, but I'm not counting out Enzo. Like I said, I really hope that Enzo can even fight his way back in the starting lineup. Because at this, before I continue, everybody agrees at this point. We don't dislike our players. We want to wish them the best of luck. But we can criticize them. If I don't like a way a player's playing, I'm going to say it, just like everybody else is. It's that simple. However, we want these players to compete and perform at the standard we know this club can. And a player that has been performing up to the club's standards is Pedro Neto. Pedro Neto gets, I think, a 7.5, I think, for right now. It's not an 8 yet. It easily could be. I think he only gets a 7.5 because some of his performances, you know what? He has been super consistent since the break period. And we could check out their statistics. I probably should have brought out their statistics as well. But the last goal against Arsenal, he showed his quality on both sides, and he's just solidifying himself more and more into this Chelsea starting 11. He's just doing it. Pedro Neto's been fantastic. He's not a B team player anymore. He's an A team player only, and he's Judy. With both sides on the left and the right, he really has been giving Maresca problems. And I think with a player we're going to talk about in a few seconds, it easily could extend that problem further for Maresca. Misha, I've been very, very happy with how Misha has played in the last few, especially in the Carabao Cup games, where I think has really helped his confidence. Of course, he's almost, I think, 24 years old now, Misha. He's not a young kid anymore. But he's starting to show his confidence. And Maresca said he's not a confidence player, but he's so most definitely a confidence player. It's not even a question. Not even close to a question. The last goal he scored against Noah was a absolute strike and a half. It was a blinder from Mudryk. In the game against Arsenal, he looked halfway decent when he came on. Of course, he got subbed on for Noni, and Neto obviously going on the other side. But he's looked very, very good. I think you could say, based off of what we said Mudryk before to now, I think you could easily give him a 6.5, 7. I think a 7 is honestly more fair. Obviously, he's only played very, very good in these Conference League games. When he's came out in the Premier League, he's looked kind of average. But at the same time, I think you got to give the credit where it's due. If Mudryk can keep improving, it's what's best for the team. And I'm really rooting for this guy right now. If he could end up becoming a smart player and a player that can get good playing time in this team, that's what we all want. So I think Mudryk gets a good rating. Now, onto a player that hasn't been performing. Of course, he scored only in the Wolves game and the Nottingham Forest game. Those are about his only two really, really good performances all season. Noni Madueke. Outside of that, what has he really done? In the Arsenal game, he was kind of non-existent. In the Man United game, he was really kind of non-existent. In the Liverpool game, he was really kind of non-existent. The guy hasn't been performing. Now, we learned recently that he basically stormed down back into the team locker room before the game had ended. When he got subbed off, he went into the locker room. Only if it was for a few minutes. He went back into the locker room and came back out. Of course, it could have been just from him being mad at himself and needing a second, but at the same time, you don't do that. You don't do that. His temperament is a problem, and sometimes it's good. His ego is huge. He believes in himself to a massive degree, which you should. You should. But sometimes you need to know when to get mad at yourself and when to not. And right now, I love Noni. I love him, and I really, again, all the players we wish the best for. But right now, Noni is not having a good, since the last international break, he has not been good. He has not. And when we have another player we're also going to talk about in a little bit, he might be up for conversation there as well to take that spot. He will be. So I think Noni, honestly, I think it's a 4. Noni has been one of the most poor players since the last international break. He's barely done anything. He's barely done anything at all. So I think Noni needs more time to develop, and I think he might need even time to be rotating in more now. It's that simple. Joao Felix has been very, very good in Conference League games, and we've also just learned that I think they said something with his socks. He threw his socks off. He got pissed off that he wasn't coming into the game. And I feel bad for Joao Felix because in a way, he has no right to be sitting on the bench playing B team games. This guy is way too good to be sitting on the bench not playing. He gets a 6.5 just for his performances in the Conference League, but this guy should be playing almost every day if possible. But the lineup doesn't let him be picked. but that doesn't mean he should not be playing. He should be rotated in and out more. It's that simple, dude. For that alone, I'm going to give Felix a 6.5 for now because of his conference league appearances, but I'd love to see him play more in the Premier League. He hasn't really since. Um, when was the last time he even played in the Premier League? I can't even remember. That's what it says at all. Nico Jackson, I mean, he has been fantastic. He showed a lot of good performances, but the last two haven't been spectacular. Of course, he scored in the Liverpool game, did in the last two games, but I think it's still fair to give him a 7. I've loved the way Nico Jackson's played this season. He's up for more goals, I think, overall goals and assists than he did the previous season. And that was obviously expected. I think that Nico Jackson was up for a big year. And he's overall showed that so far. I think the last two games have been more difficult, and he's been but he's still done a good job. Just because he hasn't scored or given an assist doesn't mean he's played bad. He's played very good, but he hasn't been able to get the goals and assists, but he still contributed to team success. That's why I think Nico at this point has been a very, very solid player. I think a 7 is very fair. Now, Nkunku, it's a very difficult one for Nkunku, I think, for the main reason being that Nkunku isn't a striker. He's not. He's not. And there's no debate on this. Nkunku is not a striker. He's a 10 or a false 9 who can sit in behind, collect the ball, but he wants to be he doesn't like the ball. He likes the ball played into him with him running toward a goal. He doesn't like the opposite, like a Nico Jackson type. He doesn't like it like that. I think that Nkunku gets a 6. He's been performing still in the Conference League, but as a striker, he hasn't been great. He has not been great. So that alone, he gets a 6. I'm not going to rate Jadon Sancho for the main reason being that he hasn't played in the last 4 games, um, as well as the Premier League. So I can't give him a rating for that reason alone. He's been injured a little bit. He's been ill. So I'm not going to give him a rating just because of that reason alone. Cole Palmer. Now it's a little bit of an interesting one. Cole Palmer has still been very, very good, even in the games recently. Of course, he was injured basically going into this game against Arsenal. He was injured in last week's game against United, but he's still been very, very good. Even though he's been basically man-marked all season, he still gets a 7. Of course, we gave him a 10 out of 10 before the last international break, and it was only fair. But he's dipped down a little bit because of his lack of production. But again, he's still showing why he's such a good player. So I think a 7 out of 10 is very fair, and we know his quality, and he's not going to stay quiet for long. Cole's going to get back in the goals and assist tally, and he's going to keep playing the way he's been playing all year. Mark Gu got on the goal scoring charts for the first time in Chelsea. He scored in the last game against Noah, and he looked great in that game. I wish he honestly stayed in for longer in that one, but it didn't end up happening. Now, do I think that he should be playing more? No, he's a certified B team player and cup game player as well. But I'm very happy with how I've seen him play so far in cup games, but I don't think there's been enough to rate him. If I'm going to give him a rating, I think I'd give him around an average 5 or 6. I think there's no way to give him a rating right now. Now, I also want to do Coach Enzo Maresca. Now, Enzo has showed his willingness to change tactics, change player roles in a way. Putting a reset left back was one that we weren't thinking about. I mean, so he's been very, very willing to make change in this lineup. However, there's been certain times I've been very not understanding of what he wants. In the game against Arsenal, it almost seemed like he almost seemed like he wanted to draw. He didn't want to go make a big substitution for someone like Cole Palmer should have been substituted earlier in the game. He wasn't up to the scrap. I think it would have created a different dynamic if Cole was taken off in the Arsenal game. And I think overall, it almost seemed like he wanted to draw. In United, it almost seemed like, again, he was happy taking a draw. So with Maresca, it seemed like he's been willing to make changes to the lineup and changes to the players. But at the same time, there needed to be more. I've been very happy. And again, it's hard to criticize a guy who currently has our team in third place. We haven't been in third place in God knows how long, and I've been very happy. However, we can't let off the gas. We simply cannot let off the gas. This Chelsea team are in third place, only by 3 points off 10th. So it is a massively, massively close affair from third to 10th. Even United are only 1 point behind the 10th place team in 15. That means they're 4 points behind us. So we cannot let off the gas. We need to keep getting points, and hopefully, almost mandatorily, we need to go out and we need to get a win against Enzo Maresca. We need his former team, I should say, in Leicester City. That needs, and it's almost a mandatory thing to happen in the game coming up after the international break. That is almost a mandatory thing. So I'm going to give Enzo Maresca, I think, a 6.5, mainly based off of how willingness he's been able to change the lineups. And I also think because of where we are currently. So quickly, before we do anything, I think we should pick the overall lineup that I think the best Chelsea lineup is. I think a lot of guys are really going to have mixed opinions. I think either you're going to have a mixed opinion or you're really going to know what the starting lineup is. And in my case, I think it's pretty clear as day what I think the starting lineup is. And I wonder how you guys think it is too. Starting from the back, this is maybe the only position in the team where I'm not set on somebody right now. But I am going to go with the benefit of doubt, and I am going to go with Robert Sanchez. I'm going to allow him to keep his role at the back for now. I'm not confident at all, but I really don't see a better option. When it comes to January, we really are going to be hoping that there's been performances and better performances from both goalies. Because right now, I have no faith in any of the two goalie options and only want to see Georgie back in net. So that right now is going to stay the case. The center back pairings is going to stay the same as it's been all year in the Premier League. It's going to be Levi Colwill and Wesley Fofana. Those two guys have been the guys who've been performing at a pretty good level so far this entire Premier League season. They haven't been too spectacular. I think Levi's been better than Wes, but both have been showing very good strides of becoming a good partnership. So they need to stay the same pairing, especially when the other options have not been performing very well. So I think it needs to stay. Now, at left back, I think this one it's the only player who could play that role right now. Marco Correa is the best left back option we have at the team. No question. It's not Vega. It's not Malo Gusto. It's definitely like I don't want to see Reece James there, especially he was very good there. I'll give him credit. Reece played very well left back, but he's not a left back. He's a right back. But I think Cucurella, especially after the game we watched him play in the game against Arsenal, man of the match performance, of course, he's got to stay there. And I think he's only but more solidified that spot, and he's going to stay there. So Cucurella needs to stay at left back. Now, right back, in my opinion, it's Reece. It's Reece. Malo Gusto, of course, has done very well, but this season hasn't been the same. Reece has came back and he's looked good. Of course, you need to be able to let him develop time, but he's healthy. He's played games. Let him play. So I think this is the back lineup. It stayed basically consistent now since the international break. I guess you could say the first one. So it needs to stay the same. Outside of this goalie position, I simply don't know. I simply don't know. So it's got to stay the same for now. The midfield pairing of Lavia, who actually I should put here, and Caicedo. I'm going to keep it this lineup for now. I think that Caicedo is a pinned-in guy into this team. No one should replace Caicedo. Nobody. Not at all. He's locked in. No one close. However, with Lavi, it's a different story. I think that Lavi should play for now alongside Caicedo, but Lavi easily could be subject to change depending on performances, but I don't think he's been bad in any of the games he's played in so far. Therefore, I think it should stay the same. Now, of course, it's only one player in this attacking mid role. It is Cole Palmer. It is Cole Palmer. Nobody has been as good as Cole Palmer in our entire team so far this season, and he's going to stay the same player. I think Cole Palmer in that attacking mid spot is going to stay all year. There's no one even close that will comfort his spot. So we know how good he is. Cole stays there. On the right, it's Pedro Neto. It's Pedro Neto. Now, he's been playing on the left, and he played on the left in the last game. Noni Madueke I've taken out because I just haven't simply liked what I've seen out of Noni in these last few games, and I personally think that Pedro Neto's been better. It's as simple as that. So, and especially because he scored the goal after inverting in the last game off the right hand side, so he needs to play. And who I put on the other side is Jadon Sancho. Now it's funny that I have Jadon Sancho on the left side, especially after he hasn't even been playing games. But I think the dynamic of having the guy who will open up space for you compared to the guy who's going to get in behind and be a attacking threat, a passer versus the attacking, maybe more goal scoring threat. So I think having the two alternatives create really, really good things for the team. And up top, it's Jackson. Yes, it's not Nkunku, it's Nico Jackson. Um, I think he is just too useful to the team. He's just too useful to the team, and he does so much about moving to those channels, pressing. I think he's so good at that to the point where it's basically taken him out of the lineup. This is the lineup I've chosen. Let me know what you guys think. I think that basically everyone should have a very similar looking lineup. And if you don't, I really don't know who you're switching. The only position I would maybe consider for swapping is the winger spots, but everything else should be the exact same. I think nobody's lineup should really look much different, and all Chelsea fans should really have a very similar lineup. But let me know what you guys think. That's it for today. I really think that going into this international break, hopefully Maresca's going to have more time to develop with the guys. But we'll have to see when we get there. We'll have to see. Thank you very much for watching. See you guys in the next one.